Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Jackson McCurry, and as always, lately at least, I've been joined by Jack Duffin. Jack, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. So wrapping off the offense, and no, this one's an interesting one. There's nothing on the surface to discuss, but there is lots of undercurrent and interesting bits to look at.
Yeah, we are wrapping up the offensive side of the ball, like Jack said, on the off-season roster deep dive, which if you haven't already, go to thedogland.com and check it out. We are looking at the interior of the offensive line, not a position that the Browns should be worried about in the present, but also preparing for the future, which we'll dive into on today's episode. Jack, when you look, we talked about it on Wednesday when we looked at the offensive tackle spot. Your average NFL team has 9 offensive linemen. 4 tackles, and then the 5 go to the interior. When you look at this Browns roster right now, heading into 2021, we have 4 guys on that interior spot that we feel confident will be on the roster heading into 2021 and perhaps even 2022. Let's start off with the left guard. Joel Bitonio, he's been here since 2014, the longest tenured Cleveland Brown at this point. When he's been on the field, he's been a Pro Bowl / All-Pro type guard. Doesn't get the recognition he deserves this year. He finally did. Many websites or, national pundits pegged him as an all-pro. And, when the Browns are finally good, it's finally nice to see guys like Bitonio, who have been good his whole career, finally getting the recognition he deserves.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Really, really good play. It's unfortunate that his career arc's almost come at that time that it's quite late in the window. You would love for him to be sort of into his first, second year and be like, we've got this guy for a long time. But no, he's been a great player to watch. Obviously, overshadowed in a way by having someone as phenomenal as Joe Thomas stood right next to him, which many people could rightly ask and go, is he boosted by having him there, or is it a case of he's also awesome? But when you're playing next to a guy that's destined to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, you're never going to get the shining light on you. But it's been such a good player, and no, really, really positive to see him getting that recognition. But it's also a question of how much longer is it left? Are we allowed to discuss that on the show, or are you going to shout at me and throw things?
No, we can go ahead and talk about it. Bitonio coming in, he got an extension in 2017, 5 years, $50 million, and he's got 2 years left on this current deal. $10 million he's projected to make this year, $10 million projected next year. But the thing is, and we'll talk about it as we talk about another offensive lineman. He has no dead cap or anything to him. The Browns could move him in a cut or in a trade, and it wouldn't hurt them in terms of the salary cap. So he's at 30. You tend to not pay guys or give guys extensions once they get past the age of 30, just because you don't know how much the body's going to hold up. Bitonio's had his injuries for sure, but this could be, and I hate to say this just because Bitonio's been here so long, he's finally getting to play on a good team. These last 2 years could be the last 2 years Joel Bitonio dons a Cleveland Browns uniform.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one where as soon as they get someone talented behind him, they're going to replace him. We'll get on to Teller in a moment when we look at the right guard, but that's effectively where it's going, because you've got Baker. Suddenly, as we discussed a few weeks ago, once you pay Baker, there's less money for everywhere else. So they're going to pay big money to a tackle, and that leaves decent money to one player on the interior. You could stretch to a second one that's okay money, but not elite money. But it just comes down to how well do these developing guys behind them improve. So there's little chance Joel Bitonio gets anything longer than those 2 years. Could it be his final year this year, or will he play out both of these final years on his contract? I think it very much comes down to the likes of Dunn, Forbes, how any of these guys play and develop, because as I've always said, if you're getting 90% out of a guy on a rookie deal, unless it's your quarterback, you move into the rookie deal rather than the veteran on big money. And that's just smart roster construction, because you can't keep everyone. So if you can get that 90% production, you've just got to do it. So no, he's been, for me, if you look at anyone on the roster, the best servant of any player. And I think that'd be pretty unanimous across all fans. But good things have to come to an end. If he was in his sort of 27 at this point, you could be going, do we actually give Batonio a new deal rather than Teller? And I think that'd be a fair ask. If there's 2 years difference, you might go, actually, Joel Batonio, we've seen more out of you. Let's extend Joel Batonio and we'll allow Teller to walk after his deal. But you're only keeping one of them 2 guys, so long term. I'm not saying it's you've got to get rid of him here. You can keep both of these last 2 years and be perfectly fine. But that Baker deal's coming, and when that Baker deal comes, you've got to save some money somewhere. So Joel Batonio, you've got 1 or 2 years left, and fans, this isn't why is Jack saying this? This is a genuinely go out there and enjoy these guys. You're going to have a lot of churn on this roster. You're going to have lots of these players that have been here for a long time, not part of what will hopefully be 6 years of getting into the playoffs and really competing for a ring. So go out there and give everything to a player like Joel Batonio, who's given everything to the team. And big love to the guy. I hope that in 1-2 years' time, when he gets his next shot, he can cash in and sort of get 4 more years somewhere else and get some good money.
Yeah, I mean, I bought his jersey this year, and like I haven't bought a Browns player jersey in a couple years, but I bought his just because he's been here, he's performed at a high level, and like, you know, you buy some of these guys like, you know, Nick Chubb, for instance, or Oakham, and they've only been here a couple years, and they might not perform as well as, say, a Batonio. Batonio has performed at a level close to a Joe Thomas, to where I can wear that jersey for the next 10 years and nobody will be like, why'd you buy that jersey? Well, Batonio is one of the all-time great Browns. Like, yeah, he hasn't played on any good teams up until this year, but he's been solid, productive, and consistent since he took his first snap as a rookie in 2014. And I feel pride wearing that jersey just because he was there through the bad times, and now he's joined the good times. And even if, you know, we move on from him in a year or two, he's still one of the all-time greats of the Donna Brown's uniform. So, you know, it'll be sad the day that he has to leave, you know, but he's been a great Brown through and through, on and off the field. And I have no problem wearing that jersey with pride. Let's go ahead and talk about the other guards, just because you had brought it up while you were talking, Jack. Wyatt Teller, probably the last good move, one of the few good moves John Dorsey made here as a GM, was trading for Wyatt Teller on the final cutdown day in 2019, or no, yeah, in 2019 with Buffalo. You know, Buffalo was always a team that people looked at because they had some depth on the offensive line, and you know, Teller was one of the guys that had to go, and Dorsey flipped a couple late round picks to get him, and you know, he showed some promise in 2019 on that offensive line, and then this year, under the guidance of Bill Callahan, Teller was the number 1 ranked offensive lineman in the National Football League, and came out of nowhere. Some would say, I mean, a lot of us were keeping an eye on him last offseason and into training camp just because we saw the potential in him, and it paid off. And he was one of the reasons why the Browns got to the playoffs and was able to make a little noise in the AFC playoff picture.
It's insane that we were talking about going into last season of, is the starting right guard Drew Forbes or is it Wyatt Teller? To go from we don't know if he's going to be the starter to the number 1 offensive lineman of the whole of PFF, it was insane. It's absolutely it's ridiculous. It was a great ad, obviously making up for the issues with getting rid of Zeitler, with getting Corbett and then moving Corbett on, but he's really stepped up and been that sort of player that we would love opposite another guard to sort of cement the line. So no, really, really exciting play. The fact is they probably go out and pay him this offseason. Why not get it done a year early? But there is the other school of thought of, do they wait 1 more year? Because even though they would be potentially costing themselves a bit more by doing it a year later, there's that question of, we have seen 1 year of insane production out of Wyatt Teller. So if we're paying him right at the top level, most likely. do they wait, or do they say to him, hey, you've been amazing. We're not sure if you can repeat this, but we're going to pay you like 90% of the top guy. And yeah, that you can take this money. We'll give you 3 years of that or 4 years of that on top of your 1 year remaining. Sign it, be happy, or we'll wait 1 more year and we'll come back to it. But if you're dropped down to being a top sort of a top 16, say, guard, we'll probably still keep you, but we're going to be talking about 3 million less than what this offer is currently on the table. And he might go, actually, yeah, give me let's say it's 8 million rather than 11 million. Because if it goes wrong, suddenly he's on 5 million and that's a lot less money. So I think they'll have discussions this year. And I think they'll be aggressive and really get that deal done.
Absolutely. You talk about just a small sample size. I went back and actually looked at Batonio because when they signed him to that extension in 2017, it was kind of shocking because he missed 6 games his second year, and then in 2016 he had missed 11 games. And I think there was some questioning about why the Browns gave him $50 million. And it's when they signed Batonio and they also signed Treader. It was also, I think they had seen what Batonio could do and what they thought he could be. It turned out to be a great deal. I mean, I think Teller started the last 8 games of 2019, and then he missed some time last year, but when he was on the field, he was obviously the best offensive lineman in the National Football League. If you said like 11 million a year is what you think the asking price, like what you think it could be for a Teller extension potentially.
Yeah, I think if you're going to pay him, so you've got like the top guy. Yeah, it was a few years. You're looking at around top of the market is about 15. If you can get him on 10, do you potentially do it and go, hey, we'll give you 10. Let's sign 10, 4 years, 5 years potentially. Let's try get that signed in and done. Because if you regress to being a top 16, so they go, actually, we do want to keep you. We're going to pay you around 7, 8. And he might go, actually, yeah, give me the 10. Let's sign that. And if he ends up performing to that level, we've given Batonio 10, and that was a long time ago he signed that deal. So would be a big win for the Browns to go, let's gamble on it. Because, yeah, if not, then 2 years down the line, you're going, we'll move on from him. We've got another guard that's stepped up and we're looking really good. So, no, I would say try get 10 done. But, yeah, at the same time, if he wants 11, 12, I could understand that. You've been the best guard in the best O-lineman in the NFL, so why not ask for the money? But is it a one-year wonder? You never know. There is going to be regression. Don't get me wrong. And if you're sitting there going, oh, he's not going to regress, he's not going to be the number 1 offensive lineman in the NFL next year. That's perfectly fine. If he is a top 4 guard, top 6 guard, that's amazing. And to get him down at 10 million, that be over the moon.
He's going to be the Joe Thomas of guards, and he's going to never miss a snap, and he's going to be number 1 year in and year out for the next decade, Jack. Don't you know, Brown? You got to think Browns fan logic. No, but I'm with you. I have no problem if they get this extension done now. They don't wait a year, and if they can get them for between 10 to 12 million. It's a great deal. You got money freeing up from Batonio and potentially the next guy we'll talk about. But Teller, he seems to be a leader. I don't know if like the Pittsburgh game where they were mic'd up. He was, firing up that offensive line, saying, this ain't the same old Browns. Teller is completely bought in, I think, to what they're selling there in Berea. And it seems like he's going to be a key, vital part. My fascination is how do they stack him in terms of priority for extensions this offseason? Between, obviously, Baker's number 1, but then you go, who's next in line? Is it Teller? Is it Ward? Is it Chubb? Is it Ronnie Harrison even potentially, which we'll get down the line when we talk about the safety room? It's so fascinating to see how they're going to prioritize all the extensions because everybody's going to want to get paid, especially if the Browns keep winning.
I think where it's such a smart front office, they're looking at more the overall market compared to the team, because if there's no other big guys going to get a guard contract, he's not that much of a priority. In terms of, do you do him first or do you wait? So it's one that you can wait a little while longer. But no, he's 26.2, so it's going to be 26.5, 26.6 by the time the season starts. So you can wrap him up for until he's sort of 31. And then, you're looking for your next person. So it's basically, hey, you've got Batonio that's got 1-2 years left. You've got Wyatt Teller that's got 1 year, and let's say we give him 4 more. So he's got 5 years left. That's perfect. You bring in your guard. Hopefully you draft that guard to replace Batonio. Maybe it's someone on the roster, which we'll touch on, or it's someone that is drafted in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. 4 cheap years, you extend them, and then that's your sequencing. That's the buzzword Andrew Berry loves. This is your let's keep one. Just keep that cycle moving of bring one in, pay one, bring one in, pay one. At all times you've got one on a veteran deal, one on a rookie deal. That's the dream, where you can sit there on the board of go, here's the timeline of these deals. But no, I think we're in a really, really nice position at guard. And the upside is there. It's massive.
Absolutely, without a doubt. The last guy to touch on for the starting part of the interior of the offensive line is J.C. Treader. And, this dude, he's been great since he came to Cleveland. Pretty much an unknown. I don't think too many people knew who he was when we signed him back in 2017, but guy has been solid since we picked him up in free agency from the Packers. So much so that the Browns have given him 2 contracts, the initial one and the contract extension. He hasn't missed a game, which is also surprising just because the dude sometimes goes out there on just one leg because of the ankle injuries he's had. He's also the president of the Players Union. So he's got a lot on his plate, but he's one of the underrated guards or one of the underrated centers in the league. I think for sure he doesn't get enough recognition just to how solid he's been year in and year out, but he's another guy much like Batonio. He's entering his 30s here, and actually next week he'll turn 30. He's got a couple years left, not much guaranteed money, if any. He's obviously he's in the short term, but he's not in the long term cards for the Browns.
Yeah, so it's sort of that perfectly in line with Batonio if you've got 1 or 2 years left. And I think if we look at it sort of in a tough way, one of those 2 players is gone in a year's time and the other one's gone the year after. Which order they go isn't so much about them, because I think both players will play at a good level for at least another 2 years. It comes down to where's the replacement step up, or where's the value fall in the draft of like, oh, we get a really good guard in the 3rd round, but the center isn't very good, or we've got a really good center we like that can step in immediately. We don't have the guard, or Harris, True Forbes, Dunn, one of these guys we'll get to impresses them. So yeah, it's more down to the development behind them, but he's not going to be here long term. He is 30 already, 2 years left. You're not signing him to a long deal, because if you're keeping Batonio and Tretter, then you're letting Wyatt Teller go and there's no long-term plan. Wyatt Teller, he's so much younger. You've got that extra 4 years, and it just comes down to age. We've all played Madden before, and not to compare managing a team to Madden, but we've all done it. Player turns 30, you're looking to ship them off and get the next youngster in. And that's pretty much how the teams are working as well. Obviously, you can keep odd guys here if they're slightly older, but production's going to go down. And if we want to be winning Super Bowls, we have to be ruthless. And you might have thought that was a slip of the tongue. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. That was an S on the end of Super Bowl. It's an S because I want multiple. And I'm not interested in all-in 2-year wonders that we throw everything at the table. And quite frankly, I'm happy with a 7 to 9 win team for the next 4 years after we have 2 where we might potentially get to sort of the championship game one of these next 2 years. No, I'm not interested in that. I want 6 years of competing for rings, and you've got to look big picture. So the emotion of a guy like Batonio and Tretter, who there is emotion there, more for Batonio than Tretter, but they're both great servants of the team. their future isn't in Cleveland if you want to be winning rings. So it's Wyatt Teller is the future. But let's enjoy this one year of all three of them, another year, and then 1 year of two of them, and then whoever steps up, Wyatt Teller is the rock of the interior line for the future.
Without a doubt. I mean, yeah, Treader's been great. I mean, obviously another guy on and off the field. He's been solid, constant pro. But, you know, this is the thing. When they get older, you got to have replacements for them. And it sucks to see him go, but you just got to hope that, you know, Sashi and Stefanski, you know, they find guys in the draft, and then Coach Callahan, as long as he's going to be here, because he's obviously getting up there in age as well, that he can continue to develop these guys and turn them into solid starters. And when you look at the potential depth behind Bitonio, Treader, and Teller, well, Bitonio and Treader for sure, Nick Harris, he's the wild card, I think, right now, to say the least at this point. You know, they drafted him, and everybody kind of knew that he was going to be the center of the future. And he got into a spot where a couple times this year he had to play right guard because of injuries. And it was not good. But everybody kind of seemed to forget. They drafted him to be the center of the future. So you can't criticize him because of how he played at right guard when he's probably more likely going to be the center of the future. Now, we'll see whenever he gets that chance if he's good enough to be the long-term center. But I feel like Barry and the scouting department drafted him with the idea in mind that in a year or two, he replaces J.C. Treader as the center of the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, there was lots of smart people sort of pegging him as a second and third round pick. So the talent is obviously there on tape. We saw he's not a guard, and that's perfectly fine. He's not drafted, not expected to be a guard. It was just when you're on your 10th, 11th O-lineman for the season, literally anyone's out there, and Blake Hans is a testament to that. But no, it's one that I think he's in a really, really good spot to make this JC Treader's final year. Could they go a year early on it? It wouldn't be crazy. I think they won't, but you never know. It's a move they could certainly make. So yeah, just keep an eye on it. That I would say it's sort of 95% chance that Treader is back. But crazier things have happened if they think, actually, we want to free up some money and do some other stuff, and we want to make an aggressive move and say, let's throw a name out there, Marshawn Lattimore, let's trade for him, let's throw some money here. We need to cut somewhere because we can't afford it all. Treader might be the guy where they go, actually, it's a little bit painful, but we really, really like Nick Harris. Callahan's been raving about him. We go, let's go for it. So crazier things have happened, but I think he's definitely got a year as a backup, and then he's got 2 years starting. But it's probably going to be a case of he's not going to be our starter long term. It's going to be that position. If Wyatt Teller's there, they might pay him if he becomes sort of a middle tier guy of, hey, let's give him $4-5 million a year. We're not going to overpay him. That could be something they do, but it's a good chance that you'll throw guys in there. Austin Reiter, who the Browns didn't even think was worth a backup center spot, is now playing in the Super Bowl. So yeah, he's cracking jokes with old Kermit the Frog, Paddy Mahomes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how Harris continues to develop. You know, you hope that he'll be the long-term center, but if not, the Browns can, you know, take a crack on someone in the draft again, or find a guy like J.C. Treader on a cheap free agent deal and have him be the center for a couple of seasons. That worked out so well. Because I mean, nobody knew what to expect out of Teller, and he's turned into a solid, consistent starting center for us. You look at the guard, potentially, like who could be groomed as the future replacement for Joel Bitonio. You know, you had to be encouraged by Michael Dunn. He came in a spot where a playoff game against Pittsburgh, going up against Cameron Hayward. Dunn was a guy that played in the XFL a year ago at this time, was one of the top-rated offensive linemen in that league by Pro Football Focus. The Browns took a chance on him, and it paid off in that one game. Unfortunately, he got hurt, so we'll see how his future development goes. You also have Drew Forbes, who opted out last year because of COVID, And you also have Blake Hance, who, the guy named Blake that became a sensation overnight, became verified on Twitter. Everybody knows his name now just because of the fascinating article that Peter King wrote about him. But you have those three guys that could potentially be the guard waiting in the wings to replace Batonio in a year or two, or they look towards the draft and, they could take a stab on someone, in day 3 or as an undrafted free agent. You feel confident because of Bill Callahan's track record, but you don't know if these guys are going to be the same players that they were in those key critical moments that they were this past season.
Yeah, so you've got three guys that they've all got deficiencies there. Michael Dunn, obviously, we've seen a small sample size. Was it 2 games, I want to say, that we saw from him? Obviously, 2 great games, don't get me wrong. We saw 2 games, 54 snaps. It's 1 game. I don't think we can count the 1 snap against the Jets. But if we count that sort of wildcard game against Pittsburgh, he was brilliant. Really, really good. More of a run blocker than a pass blocker, but that's perfectly fine. Overall, an 81 PFF grade. So, brilliant performance. But it's only 1 game. So crazier things have happened. Could he be the guy? We don't know. Drew Forbes, there is so much hype around Drew Forbes. For a 6th round pick that hasn't played any football for 2 years, you would think he's sort of a 2nd round pick the way he's talked about online. He's exciting. Interesting to see what he's got, but at the same time, he could be a nothing. Blake Hance, obviously, is a phenomenal story, but when he played, it wasn't that great. So, yeah, they could go the other route of, say, let's bring in a UDFA, but I think they'll probably let those 3 battle. If they really like to, and that's a big if, they could steal that 4th tackle spot and keep 2 of these guards. I don't think they will, but they certainly could. If they go, actually, we think Dunn and Forbes are both legit, then 1, they could trade them, and we saw what Wyatt Teller went for. 3rd and it's 5th and a 6th. If they get a sort of, even if it's a 5th rounder for one of those 2, that's a good investment. Or the other option is they do keep both and they go, look, one of these 2 guys is going to step up and replace Batonio next year. One of these 2 guys is going to be the backup for 2 years. It's certainly a route they could go, but it's probably, if you're going to say the tightest competition in the entire roster for a spot, it's these 3 guys. I'd put Blake Hance at a massive disadvantage to the other 2, but Dunn versus Forbes, I think, is an exciting battle. I think if I had to bet money, I would be putting the money on Dunn to be the guy. So he's, what's his career-wise? Has he got any accrued seasons, or is he literally right back at 0? I think over the cap is saying 1 accrued season, even though he's been in the league since 2017. He's bounced around, but he's been at the Rams, the Jags, the Dolphins, the Browns. Earnings by team. He's got a little bit of money from the Jags. But it's a player that you've got there, and let's see what he can do. I'm excited. Let's see what Callahan can work up. But you've got a nice pipeline, and they'll keep adding talent. If you're wondering, hey, why are they adding 3rd, 4th round picks on the O-line? Because they just want to keep bringing guys through. And it's going to be a constantly revolving door. The idea that we've had like fixed lines in the past where 4 of these guys, hey, they're here long term. You can't afford 4 vets if you want to pay Baker Mayfield, have good wide receivers. So you've probably got 2 guys here long term. They're Wyatt Teller and they're Jedrick Wills. Everyone else, they're on sort of a 2-year clock. Enjoy them, love them, respect them, and it's certainly a case of respect. They have earned that praise. But you can't keep everyone, so best of luck to them and hope they get loads of money at some other team and we get some comp picks.
Yes, absolutely. We love them comp picks. In terms of the draft, like I haven't looked at anybody like day 3. I only know one, and it's someone that I actually know personally, Bryce Hargrove, who was at Pitt, just was at the College Gridiron Showcase, got to perform drills in front of a bunch of scouts for the NFL teams, and he's not one of these highly ranked guards. Like, you don't see him on like a top 200 big board, but guy's got some good movement, smart kid, and he was consistent at Pittsburgh as an all ACC guard the last couple of years. So, I'm shameless plug. If the Browns could get him in day 3 or as an undrafted free agent, I would love it. It'd be a feel good story, and he's a local kid. So, if they want to draft someone, I'll make a case for him, to say the least. But right now, going into 2020 offensive line looks solid. And it's nice. We have depth too, to say what they're going to do in terms of that depth, that's left to be determined. But, that's one of the position groups as a whole, the offensive line, where, we shouldn't expect any major movement this year, to say the least.
No, basically the O-line, the only questions revolving around is Hubbard. And the rest of it, it's nice. I've mentioned 3 lines as backup guard, and it's Bryce Callahan's job to decide which one it is. And that's a nice thing to say. He's obviously a great judge of talent, great developer of talent. And in the past, Browns fans would be like, oh, don't worry, we can stash this guy on a practice squad. Forget stashing guys in a practice squad. I think we touched on it earlier in the series of shows. We're 26th on that order. There is somebody going to stash these guys on a practice squad, because the guys the Browns get rid of are going to turn out to be starters or role players for teams up there at the top. Because, as sort of the guardrail said, it's about churning your roster, because Dunn's a perfect example. He's been through the league. No one wanted him. And then suddenly he pops up, plays one game, and he's absolutely balling it in the playoffs. So, no, you're not going to stash guys on practice squads. It's we got lucky this year because it was lockdown, sort of COVID and everything. Teams didn't want to take a punt on other people's practice squad players because of the wait to go through COVID protocols, everything like that. So no, it's interesting. Lots and lots of talent. But yeah, these other guys, I don't think any of them stand a shot. Harris is locked in, and Michael Dunn would be my bet.
Yeah, I think if we had to pick one for sure, I think Michael Dunn has shown it, that he can play in a big moment and produce at a high level. It was one game, but I mean, when it's a playoff game, I think that kind of holds a little bit more credence. As we wrap up, for anybody that hasn't read any of Jack's work over at thedogland.com, I suggest you go do so. We've covered the offensive side of the ball. Next week, we're going to start the defensive side of the ball, and we're going position group by position group all the way through. We'll even talk special teams, which is going to be something. Yeah, Jack's fist pumping now because he's going to drool over Javier Thomas for a half hour. But as always, definitely go check that stuff out. And Jack, go ahead and plug your Twitter and everything else you got going on.
He's number one free agent priority. So Twitter is @JackDuffin, DUFFIN. Give me a follow. DMs are open, so tweet any questions, DM any questions. They don't just have to be about roster construction. I'll happily answer any cap questions. There's a few of you jump in there and ask questions every so often. More than happy to answer them as soon as I see them. But no, it's all the writings at thedogland.com, so really enjoying the pieces there. This is 6 pieces in. There's 6 more to go. But then there's loads of other interesting articles in there, cap related, roster construction, do a bit of this, bit of that. Podcast. The other one I'm on is the Paul Brown podcast, so go check us out. We do loads of different shows. So up until the draft, we're firing out 3 a week. Post draft, who knows? We might go back to 1 a week until the season comes around. But no, all the writing, as always, it's thedogland.com. Go check it out. Make sure you're following Jack. Loads of good stuff.
As always, you can follow me on Twitter @JackMcCurry08. You can check out the Dogland @thedogland on Twitter as well as Facebook. And obviously, if you found the podcast, thanks for listening, and please keep listening. And as we get on out of here, we will be back next Monday to talk about the edge rushing position. And until then, go Browns.
Go Browns.